gave you more than I gave to myself. You had me on a shelf, but now I'm somewhere else. I was bending, breaking, lost in your storm. Now I'm a hurricane in my purest form. You tried to play me like a fool, had me down in my worth. Nah, I flipped the script on you, reborn from the dirt. You thought I stayed down? Nah, new mindset, I'm putting me first. This ain't no apology, this my reign. No more bowing down, I'm done with the games. Toxic love, no, I broke that spell. I'm the villain in your story, I wrote you hell. Messy goddess, fierce, wild, unleashed, untamed, not mild. Messy goddess, feel the fire in my eyes. No chains hold me, I cut all ties. Messy goddess, wild.
This is the Mediocre Black Woman Podcast, the space where we side-eye perfectionism, embrace our humanity, and laugh through the chaos. Girl, trust me, you're in the right place. Hey y'all, I'm Thea, your host here at the Mediocre Black Woman Podcast. I've spent over a decade working in tech, leading learning and development projects, developing content for execs, and running corporate and consumer podcasts. So yeah, I'm highly qualified, just an all-around baddie. Let's keep it real. But here's the thing. I've spent my whole life as a high achiever, doing the most and still hitting those walls we know too well. Being overlooked, underestimated, and overworked. Like my C+ work is somebody else's A++. And don't even get me started on having my ideas taken or being spoken over in meetings. Now, what really pushed me to start this show, though, was Kamala's loss in the election. It triggered something deep in me and in so many other high-achieving Black women I know. Seeing one of the most qualified candidates still not be enough for some people was a gut punch because it mirrors our experiences. So this is a podcast for us, for the women who are tired of carrying the world and still being told we're too much or not enough. It's a space to take the cape off, laugh through the chaos, and just be. So girl, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Okay, welcome everyone. Today is a special episode. We're actually here with Lexie Forbes, and her work as an astrologer and social media strategist is integral to today's episode. And so Lexie is the owner and founder of Sacred Social Studio. And Lexie and I actually connected through, meeting on Substack, enjoying each other's work, having like a genuine shared connection. And then we dug deeper and found that we both love astrology. We both love the tarot. We both love the occult, the woo-woo, as some people might say. And so there's a strong overlap of astrology, spirituality, and reclaiming ourselves through these tools. And so we're going to get into some really juicy things today. But first, welcome, Lexie.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today.
Me too. I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to set the stage for everyone. So we're going to kind of talk through acknowledging the different relationships people may have with religion and astrology, kind of through our own shared experiences. We'll talk about, we're gonna put this on the shelf. We may or may not get there today, but we're gonna put this on the shelf of something we want to touch maybe in a future episode or maybe on a live together. But why conversations about deconstructing religious conditioning are so necessary for Black women. And that'll really be illustrated through the stories that Lexie and I share today. And the goal of episode is not to persuade, you to try to do anything different but it's to explore personal experiences, cultural shifts, and some ancestral reclamation, right? And just becoming reconnected with ourselves and reacquainted with ourselves. So, Lexie, let's start with your experience of being what you told me of growing up in a religious cult.
Yeah. It's like when I say that, people are like, what? That actually exists? And yes, it does. There are people out here who come from these places. And yeah, I am third generation inside of that cult, meaning that my grandmother joined when she was young. She raised her children in it, which was my mom and her siblings. And then my mom raised me and my siblings and in it as well. And so did my cousins. And so and we're a very large family. I'm the oldest granddaughter, and there's 16 of us in total in terms of like all the cousins and everything like that. I have a younger brother, and so yeah, we were raised inside of this when my mom was growing up, it was known as a cult, but as I grew up, it started becoming more recognized as a quote unquote religion.
Mm.
And so it became a little bit more normal. And then it's not until I left that I realized, oh, I'm in a cult. And that's why I can't do like a lot of things. I was very controlled. Like even the way, like literally the way that I look right now, I couldn't wear makeup, couldn't wear nail polish, couldn't wear jewelry. I was allowed to wear pants for like special occasions for like horseback riding or things like that. But for the most part, had to wear dresses. Women had to wear quote unquote women's clothing and men had to wear men's clothing because of an Old Testament
Mhm.
verse. We believed in the Old Testament as well. So there was a lot of things like we didn't eat pork, we didn't eat shrimp, all of that stuff that we did as well as believed in the New Testament too. So it was very, very controlling and just, it was just the way that I grew up. So I didn't know anything different until, interestingly enough, until my 29th birthday, which astrologically, anyone out there knows that that's the Saturn return. And so it's during that time that I started to kind of question things. I had questioned things my whole life, but I'd always gotten in trouble for questioning because that was a big problem. And so my church would always often say, like, she has the spirit of Lucifer because she constantly questions things. And so I was constantly feeling very like evil because of that, which was not good. But I was literally even told that by my own parents that because of my questions, that was what was, that I was evil. So I grew up thinking something was wrong with me because I constantly was asking, like, what does this mean? And what about that? And things like that. And when I turned 29, all hell just broke loose and I couldn't hold back anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, it's so interesting because, like, there's so many parallels in our stories already just hearing you talk.
Yeah.
And one of the things I kind of talk about or allude to in some of my writings and recordings is, I was often, called rebellious or
Mhm.
called offensive for my questions as a child. And I never understood why asking a question could, bring up defensiveness when it's like
Right.
we're having a dialogue, there's curiosity here. We want to, but I feel like there's some cultural things that are embedded generationally as to why we don't question things or how that could
Mhm.
become or be seen as unsafe, right? In
Mhm.
some capacities. And so, I mean, I think in your parents' case, they sound like they also maybe had this fear of like keeping you safe in the process too, which is
Yes.
interesting. So
Oh,
it's like
100%.
this weird dynamic. So I went through a
Yeah.
lot of that too.
Yeah.
So my journey was totally a little bit different because we weren't we weren't forced into like we didn't go to church. We weren't that family. So, but we were Christian like like we're in the cross. But
Yeah.
me, I was like always like going with somebody else's family. I ended up at youth
Yeah.
groups. I remember at one point my mom's youngest sister would take us with our cousins to church, this old church, but here and there. But it wasn't like you guys have to go. Like I was always kind of seeking out some type of
Wow.
understanding as a child.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's in the name. My name means Theodora means a gift from God. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think like it's in the name to
That's
seek
beautiful.
out some understanding spiritually.
Oh, I love
Um,
that.
so I guess I could say I was raised Christian, but not with that same structure.
Yeah.
And when I got married, I actually converted to Catholicism, and I ended up getting
Wow.
baptized Catholic. But it was interesting. What I'm learning is that when it comes to like you can be inspired by religious leaders or inspired by priests, pastors, and things like that, but you have to be connected to the religion or the spirituality or the practice on your own as well. And
100%.
so, like, I was really connected to the priest because of the modernization and the way that he talked about how you have to make decisions for yourself, even within the
Mhm.
faith. And that was something that really called to me because autonomy is really important. But it shouldn't have been connected just to that
Right.
priest, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So, I
Yeah.
still was going to multiple churches even as a Catholic. So, I was going to Catholic mass with my husband. I was going to or ex-husband now. I was going to, a church that used the New Century Version Bible. It was non-denominational. I was going to a Kojic church across. So I was like going to church almost like every day.
You was like, I'm
Yeah,
going everywhere.
because I
I'm going
needed
to
to
get
get
this side.
something. Yeah, I was like, I needed to put all those together to just get something, right?
Oh,
So it
that's
was really
beautiful though.
challenging. Yeah, it was beautiful, but I was like, why is it this hard to get everything?
Right.
And so, I started getting questioned by my ex-husband once I started, like, getting into more of, like, I guess, the woo-woo side of, like, having crystals, and I remember him asking me, "Do you not believe in God anymore?" And I was like, I'm not worshiping the crystals, I'm not, like,
Right.
putting them
Which
above
that makes
God.
me ask how do you go from Catholicism to crystals? Like, how did that come into your life?
See, I think I've always been curious about all spiritualities, like, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. I'm a lifelong learner, I guess I would say, and I look at things from a bigger picture perspective. It's probably my Mercury and, Sagittarius
Oh,
for
well,
you.
100% it's the Mercury and Sagittarius.
Yeah. It's just this exploration of trying to find and this is why I love the tarot, and I think we'll get into this today, but
Yeah.
it's finding the language that speaks to you and the way that you can communicate your spiritual experience to God. And I don't think people realize that it's not about worshiping these things or worshiping a God. It's about how you can explain your connection to divine, to God, to source,
Yeah.
whatever you call it. But we need a language to be able to
Mhm.
do that sometimes.
Mhm.
And so the tipping point for when I was like, "Oh, hell no, I'm out," right?
Yeah.
Was with Christianity's Catholic, like, I still use my Bible, like, I'm still again, I can appreciate all of the spiritual aspects, but
Yeah.
what really did it for me where I stepped away from going all the time
Yeah.
was when, I was going through a really tough time in my marriage, and it was messy, it was very messy, and I was dealing with someone who was putting me down, and it just I'm gonna go into this on another episode, so I'm not gonna go too far into it, but I
Yeah.
remember crossing the bridge, getting in my car, crossing the bridge, going to the East Bay to meet up with one of the women who was, woman of faith. She's Christian, she's been married for a long time, kinda seek her advice on how to proceed in my marriage, and this lady told me, she said, "You know, Thea, maybe you're meant to," and this is the word she used, I'm not bullshitting here. She
Yeah.
goes, "Maybe you're supposed to learn how to suffer so that you can teach other women how to, deal with men from your husband's culture and background." And I was just like, "Wait a minute. So you mean to tell me, like,
Exactly.
my God wants me to suffer?"
No,
Like, there's
ma'am.
sacrifice and suffer, and I feel like those are 2 different things, and sometimes we get those 2 things
Mixed
conflated.
up. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Ooh, damn. That's a lot. Did you know in that moment that you were like, this was wrong? Or did you find yourself thinking like, is she right?
I'm rebellious as fuck, so
Yeah.
immediately, like, even if I don't have the language, I just know, like, I get this, like, because I got it so much as a child, and I was so used to stifling it, and,
Yeah.
like, again, learning the right things to say to make people like you and fall in love with even if it wasn't true to yourself, but still
Right.
have this, like, burning, like, "This shit is not right. This isn't," and
Yeah.
like,
Right. It's the
And
Capricorn in
so
you. We know truth. We can
yeah,
like
and so
identify it quickly.
yeah, so I just
Yeah.
looked at her, I was like, "Okay, thank you for your feedback," and
Yeah.
I left because I was like, "This woman is deep in over her head, there's something going on here that's not right, and
But
she's
that's
been
a
taught to
very
be
common
long-suffering."
belief system, though, because I know even with watching my mom in her marriage, like thankfully they're now divorced, but with my stepfather, she kind of had that same system as well, that it was like part of being a good wife is the suffering part. And so it's like
Mhm.
you kind of have to show how much you are willing to kind of go through for this man,
Yes.
to be loyal and submissive and all that stuff. And that it in learning how they make it a religious thing or a spiritual thing where they make it like your suffering is almost that to like Jesus suffering on the cross, kind of vibe where
Mhm.
it's like it's part of life is that some aspects of our relationships are going to cause some level of suffering. And therefore, you're doing what Christ did to stay
Mhm.
in this marriage and to stay in, together with this person who was causing you so much suffering. But I think it's because part of the process of it is like embracing suffering, embracing that, and conflating it to mean sacrifice, when in reality they don't have to be one and the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Long suffering doesn't mean
Right.
sacrifice. It means it's like there's some real things that when you get married and you're married, like when you get married that you really have to work through. Like there's
Yeah.
healing, there's some baggage, and relationships I feel like are the biggest self-development project that you could ever do.
Um,
Okay? But that's different from suffering. And
right. Yeah.
yeah, we're not on the same team when we're doing this whole suffering thing. We're on opposing sides of the fence,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so we were definitely my ex-husband and I need to stop saying that. My ex-husband and I were definitely opponents. Like we were like, and I feel that actually I saw someone post this. Their
Mhm.
article title was something to the effect of, "Is the church failing singles and preparing them for
Mm.
marriage?" But it was something like, "Is the world beating, the church in preparing singles for marriage?"
Mm.
And I would have to say
Yeah.
to some extent there is a little bit of failure in there in the sense
Yeah.
that um, we get all the hype about what it would be like to be married, like what the benefits of marriage are, but not
Right.
like the practical
Preparation.
step. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
100%. Unless you actually choose things like marriage counseling,
mhm.
you are not necessarily prepared for marriage as much as
Yeah,
you're just prepared to have sex.
exactly. Right. And even that
And
is
even then, you're
like,
not prepared. Actually, you're right. You're
yeah,
not
even
prepared to
that.
have sex. You
Mhm.
just are excited to do it, but you're not, they don't prepare you for sex as well. So that's
Yeah.
also a different thing.
Well, and the mindset shift around sex being a good thing now that you're in
Yeah.
this union because it's so I feel like some people are so afraid of like having sex outside of marriage that
Yeah.
when they finally get to the place of having sex, we can't even really talk about
You
it. We
can
can't
enjoy
even
it. Yeah, no, I
yeah.
had a lot of friends that couldn't enjoy it because it was they still attached it to the sin, so they had a really hard time with that, and that's one of
Yeah.
those things that's part of why, for me, why I left the church, and why, like, so
Mhm.
for me, I don't actually identify as Christian at all. I don't connect with it anymore, which is just so crazy. It's literally 10 years now exactly, because now I'm 39, which is insane, and so in my heart of hearts, it's weird to not identify as a Christian and recognize that in this 10-year mark.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, I, part of why I don't is because of, I don't like the control that kind of comes through religion as a whole, like all religions. And so I want that freedom because of the fact that it's like, for example, when it comes to something like sex, I want the ability to kind of define what that means for me rather than have someone tell me what it means or what it should be or what it should like or where it's supposed to take place or who it's supposed to take place with or any of that sort of stuff. I don't like being told how I'm supposed to be a human. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why I kind of stepped away from all of it, really, that it's like now I just identify as a spiritualist because, or a mystic, because I really just believe in energy and the
Mhm.
universe. And that makes me feel more comfortable, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that. I
Yeah.
mean, and a lot of religion, not all, but specifically when we talk about Christianity, it's patriarchal, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of the systems, the society that we live in now is a patriarchal society. And so,
Yeah.
um, you know, there that those themes and are going to be present throughout, right? And
Yeah.
so, it's interesting. I still connect to like the Psalms, the Proverbs, things like that.
Really?
And
Well,
well,
no, I like
because
Psalms and Proverbs too. Yeah.
yeah, some of them so actually when I got my first Bible as an adult, I got my
Yeah.
first Bible, it was this beautiful New Living Translation Bible,
Oh,
and it
yeah.
had this thick, like, light brown, kinda like a coffee mocha color
Oh, I
cover.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the pages were thick. It was a nice Bible,
Yeah.
and I gave it away though, but anyway, in the front of the Bible, I would do this thing, and this is why, like, how I studied it because it worked for me, but I would think of themes like forgiveness, like envy, like
Yeah.
joy, or like things like that, and then I would look up online scriptures that go with
With
those
that
themes,
theme?
and so
Yeah.
when I was having an issue, kind of like with the ta it feels like the same way you would do the tarot, right?
Right?
In a way, right? Is how I
Right.
approach things, and I would say, "Okay, I'm feeling envious. What's something
Mm,
that I can read about envy right now?" And that would help me a lot, but
yeah.
so I kind of look at again, this is how my brain works, is like it's very thematic. Like,
Yeah.
what do I need to apply right now? What's actually going to resonate with me? Because it's all literature, it's all text, it's beautifully written, but it's like, how do you apply and kind of compartmentalize
Yeah.
those things? So
Yeah.
there's this part of it and there's this part of it, or, so this is that's how I was studying it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I find it challenging to, like, be, and I'm working through this in therapy right now, like,
Hmm.
literally. I just
Yeah.
met with my therapist yesterday, and we just had this conversation talking about my relationship with God and religion,
Hmm.
and because I am working through I get triggered sometimes still by the Bible and,
Ooh.
by church and all that stuff. It really is, like, and even the word God is
Hmm.
very uncomfortable for me, and a
Mm.
lot of that is because, for me, I dealt with a lot of abuse growing up at the hands of my parents based off of the church.
Yeah.
And so because, there would be a lot of times where they would use specific Bible verses to justify them really just being abusive, not actually spanking or not actually doing any of that sort of stuff. And so it warped my mind when it came to God because I saw
Mhm.
him as this like tyrant who really gets easily jealous, easily angered, easily, all this stuff. And so I'm having to work through that because I want to have a better relationship with that word, just because I know that it's just a word. And it's also like God is source, is the universe, is this, like, it's all the same, but I
Mhm.
still get triggered by the word God. And with the Bible, it's so funny that you got rid of yours or you gave it away because I have all of my Bibles. I still have my Bibles from when I
Mhm.
was like 5, my first Bible, and I
Yeah.
still have them. And my husband was like, because we met in the religion, but we both left. And when we were moving and cleaning out the house, he was like, "Are you gonna take all these Bibles with you?" Because I have a lot of Bibles. And I was like, and I was like, because you get them for gifts and you get them like all the time. And then
Mhm.
when you're a teenager, you get the teenage version of the Bible and all this
Mhm.
stuff. And so I was like, no, I can't part with it. So I literally still have I mean, I have well over like 15 Bibles that I don't
Wow.
read. Yeah.
Wow.
And I can't get into them, but I'm just like, but sometimes I do yes, I like Proverbs, I like Psalms, and I still have a soft spot for Jesus, And
Mhm.
so I still have because I feel like Jesus is who I thought God was when I was growing up until I got to like a teenage years. That's when God sort of changed for me.
Mhm.
But Jesus still kind of gives me that. It's like, okay, he was the one that was like hanging out with the prostitutes and the outcasts.
Mhm.
So to me, I'm like, okay, that feels more in alignment with who I would hang out with and who I'd be down to hang out with. Versus in my mind, God in the Old Testament is the guy that's like, get rid of, this and women can't do this and homosexual that and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, I can't do that. But it's definitely something that I'm like trying to work through so that way
Mhm.
I can just get used to, I guess, hearing the word God and not being like, ooh, uncomfortable. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It doesn't make me angry. It just makes me a little scared. The way I was raised, and I just had this conversation with my best friend, I'm actually more nervous about God than I am about Satan.
Mm.
I'm much more nervous about him because I'm like, at the end of the day, growing up, it's like he's going to win and he's very angry. So like if he's angry and he's going to send people to hell and he's going to do all these things, like that's scary. And so I still have to work through that a lot, but I didn't even realize that until recently that I'm more
Mhm.
afraid of God than I am of Satan, which is but I don't believe in Satan. So I think that's probably
Well, that's a whole word. So if you did believe in Satan, or people who are hearing this that do believe in Satan,
Yeah, I know. They're like,
that's like a
"What?"
whoa. Well, but if you think about it, I mean, because again, okay, so I talked about this last, or was that this week when I put out growing up too fast, loving yourselves too slow.
Yeah.
So there's a portion in there where I'm touching on how, like, they create this shame around our bodies for us, right? And
Yeah.
but attach it to a thing that a child doesn't even understand yet.
Yeah.
Someone looking at me a certain way, I'm not going to understand like why that's wrong or what's going on. And so then they tend to scold the child versus like the adult. And so I think it creates this lack of understanding. And I feel like sometimes our parents missed again, not attacking our parents. They did the best they can, y'all.
Right. Yeah.
But our parents missed the fact that these are children
Mhm.
and they don't understand in the context of the world the way that you do just yet.
Right.
So, creating this like fearful God, like you're not gonna go pray to God. Like he
Right.
gonna tell you like harshly what you
Right.
need to do. And children don't their context is not there yet. It's not developed.
Right. Yeah, it's
You know?
scary. That's really scary. And especially when it's like, if God is this all-knowing, all-seeing person and I am a human being making mistakes as a kid, like, that's scary to know that God sees every little thing that I do and is gonna and it's like, it's one thing if I know that, like, okay, my parents see every little thing that I do, like, let's say if that was the case. But to know that I'm gonna be judged for it and then sent to hell for it if I don't, like, ask for forgiveness before Jesus comes back or, things like that. That's
Mhm.
where because I grew up where we did not believe, like, and that's what's so crazy. We believed in grace, but there's still a responsibility on you to make sure that, like, you're doing the right thing. So it's not abusing grace, basically. And
Mhm.
there are some people that I grew up with that were friends of mine. I didn't have a lot of friends outside of the cult, but some of the friends that I did have, that if I did have friends outside of the cult, then they were more like also in strict religions too. But that was for most of my friends. But some of my friends would be more like where they were kind of like you, where they kind of grew up, their family was in the church, but not really in the church. And so they had a lot more freedom than I did. And one of my friends, like, her family really believed in grace to the point of, I could sin, I could do whatever I want because Jesus covered it all kind of vibe. And
Mhm.
we didn't grow up like that. We grew up where it was like, yeah, Jesus covered it all, but it's because I'm supposed to do, like, the right thing all the time. So it's not that Jesus covered my sins so I can sin. It's so I can be holy and be good. And in spite of my sinning, then he covers that. But I need to ask for forgiveness and I need to ask and that whole process is terrifying because part of it is like, I remember as a kid thinking, what if Jesus comes back and I didn't, like, ask for forgiveness yet, or I
Mhm.
didn't, like, is he going to forgive me when I haven't asked for forgiveness? Or what if I forgot a sin, and it's like, what if I
Mm.
did something and, and I remember as a kid just being confused by that. And then again, asking questions and then literally being told, well, what are you doing? And it's like, what do you mean? It's not about what I'm doing. I'm asking the question.
Because I
Like,
wanna understand.
because I wanna understand, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the thing too. If you're anything, religion, belief system, cult, whatever, can't withstand questions, you got a problem. Like,
Mm.
whether we're talking about politics, whether we're talking about religion, whether we're talking about your marriage, like, if it can't stand questions, something's wrong. You need to have space to ask questions.
Well, and that also I would argue that that leads to me to believe that there's a lack of understanding yourself as to the
Mhm.
answers to some of these questions. Actually,
Mhm.
during a time this is me in Christianity out of Catholicism,
Yeah.
this I had this friend, she called one of our other friends first who would be like the more wiser person in
Yeah.
that space, and she didn't answer, so they called me next. I was like, "Oh, I'm number 2 on the dial? I thought I would be like number 3 or number 4," you know? And her daughter asked, she was like, "Well, how do you know that God is real if you can't see God?" And I was like,
Mm,
"That's a really good question."
yeah,
And I told her, I was like, "Well, you see God in your mommy, in your
yeah,
daddy, in
yeah,
yourself, and how you treat people and how you show up for people. That's how you see God, by the way that the people around you behave and connect, and
right.
that's how you know that there's evidence of God." That's
Yeah.
what I called the number one lady. I was like, "Hey, this is what I said. Was that okay?" She was like, "That was really good. You did good." I was like, "Okay." But it's
Yeah,
like, if you don't know, like, it's okay to be like, "I don't know the answer to that. Let me go find out," or
yeah.
"This is what I think it is, but I can come back and find more," you know?
Right,
And so
right.
that's a real human condition to get defensive about our things. It's not if we're
Yeah,
talking in the construct of religion and spirituality, like, the
Mhm.
ego has to die somewhere for us to all get to understanding, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so
exactly, and I definitely feel like that, like, I feel like the ego has to die in order to get to the understanding, like, that's such a good thing to say because in order for you to be safe with questions, you have to be willing to be questioned,
mhm,
and that requires an ego death, that requires not feeling like this is a personal attack against my wisdom, like, nobody's asking whether or not you're smart or not, we're just asking specific questions for the purpose of understanding and maybe to understand yourself or understand that person or whatever it is. But it doesn't have to mean it's, a question of your intelligence, which is what I think a lot of people tend to do. And I think I know for myself, when it came to my religion, I think a lot of people didn't know the answers. And that's why.
mhm,
And so that's where it's like, and they're not comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that because I already know, like, I mean, from an astrological perspective, my son is in the 12th house, the house of the unknown. So, like, I'm
mhm,
okay with the unknown. I'm okay with, I know that there's no possible way that I'm going to die knowing everything.
mhm.
So, I'm all right with being questioned because if I don't know something, I just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, and it's okay to, like, in my full opinion, it's okay to have faith in
Yeah.
God. It's okay to have faith in whatever it is that you have faith in
Yeah.
and still not know everything. That's the whole point of having faith, right? And so
Right.
opening ourselves up to these questions, I think it gets us to start thinking and being
Right.
introspective and if the quote unquote mission is to convert people to Christianity, we should be arming ourselves with the questions or the answers to the
Right.
questions, right? Or
Exactly,
so
exactly. Which that's one of those things too that it's like another reason I didn't like the church because I don't like we were responsible for because you can't get into heaven according to the church that I was in without having a star in your crown, meaning that you witnessed to someone and they were converted. And so
oh,
you have to, yeah, so a major part of the religion was going out. We went to church on Saturdays so every Sabbath, I
were you
know
Jehovah's Witness?
I wasn't, but I had a lot of Jehovah's
Oh,
friends.
very similar.
I was
Okay.
yeah, I was Seventh-day Adventist, and
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, and so that religion goes to church. We observe the Sabbath from Friday night to Saturday
Yeah.
night.
Mhm.
So, on Saturdays, you have church, and then afterwards, you go out and you do, witnessing, and you go
Mm.
out and, like, when I lived in New York, we would literally go onto, like, train stations and go down to Times Square 'cause my church was in Manhattan. We used to go to Times Square, and when you're a kid, it's fun. Like, it's just fun because 'cause you're, like, just giving out these little pamphlets, and you're like, "Hi, do you wanna come to my church? Blah, blah, blah." And, people love it because 'cause they're this cute little kid that's just giving them whatever. But the older you get, the more it's like,
Yeah.
"Don't give that to me. What is this?" And blah, 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 and then you feel that rejection piece, but you have to, quote, unquote, "get over it" because I'm here to witness. I'm here to send someone to heaven. And
Yeah.
that I don't like either because when you have to have something that requires you to convert someone else in order for you to, it's almost like an MLM. You know what I mean? Like it's like,
Mhm.
like, okay, if I can't get to heaven without you, then now I need you. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
now it's not just about myself. Now it's actually about me using you to get to where I'm trying to go. Which what is that?
Mhm.
Like why does God need me to do that in order for me to be accepted? And that's not every religion, that's just mine, but or it's not my religion anymore, but that was the religion I grew up in. But it's very like one of those reasons that I was like, no, I don't like this because that's not even when I have children, I don't have kids yet, but when I have kids, I do not want to force anything on them. This is my journey. This is how I found the universe and this is how I found who I am. And this feels in alignment with me. But my kids, my job here is to birth you, bring you here, and expose you to
Mhm.
whatever things are out there. If you decide I'm agnostic, okay, I respect that. If you decide that you're like, mommy, I'm a spiritualist and I believe in energy, okay, awesome. Like, that's great. But if
Mhm.
you're like, "Mom, I don't believe in any of that shit." Like, I'm not gonna be like, I mean, I might be a little hurt, but I'm gonna be but I'll be fine because it's not my journey. That's your journey, and
Yeah.
you have to decide that. And I think, like, having that freedom to decide what you believe in is
Mhm.
something that I wish that I had as a child, because it took me all of my 30s to be able to figure out who am I, and only in the last year have I come to a place of really feeling comfortable with not being a Christian and not being a spiritualist and being a mystic and believing in energy and nature and things like that. I only just became comfortable with that. And I'm still learning to be confident about it in terms of, like, when I'm around my very, very, very Christian family. I'm
Mhm.
still trying to learn how to own my identity when I'm in spaces where people typically look at everything that I do as evil. That's hard. And I'm still trying to navigate that. And so I just want, for my kids, I don't want them to experience that. I want them to feel free to believe in what feels in alignment for them, you know?
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Uh, it's so interesting. I'm also wondering, like, about the regional implications because I used to
Mhm.
hang out at a Seventh-day Adventist church too.
You did?
Yeah, and I was actually okay, the other way
Most
that I
people
was
don't
taught
even
to learn
know
the Bible.
SDAs.
Yeah, so the other way I was taught to learn the Bible was this, pastor. He's phenomenal, actually.
Yeah.
He and his brother used to be in a rap group in the '80s,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And his, rap skills are what helped him teach people how to, like, really understand the Bible more,
Okay.
to the point where I was, like, creating my own sermons almost in a way, like, while I was practicing, which was kinda cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would go meet up with the pastor at the library, and we'd be studying, and I've been to their church. So, like I said, but I
That
think
is
regionally,
crazy.
there must be some, like, implications with,
Well, yeah.
how things are taught because I was like, that sounds so
Different.
drastically different
Well, you know
from.
what? Because
Yeah.
SDAs are very specific. So there's cultural differences between Black and white churches. A lot of
Mhm.
times I was actually, like, my childhood, I was in a West Indian church, which my family's from the Caribbean. So it was very controlled from that perspective.
Uh,
Then my teen years, I was in a mostly white church.
mhm.
So that was different. And then my, like, late teen, early college years, I went to an SDA school, and that's where I now met my husband.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah, yeah. So we met there. But even there's different sects,
Mhm.
SECTS, inside of the SDA church. So you have people like, for example, one that people are familiar with is the Davidians, Branch Davidians, which are, if you've ever heard of Waco and the thing that happened in Waco, Texas, where all that stuff, those were Branch Davidians, and they were a sect inside of the
Ah,
SDA church. Yeah.
okay.
So there's different sides in them. And for us, we weren't recognized as, like, a specific sect, but there are certain people where they're very, very SDA. They are very, like, specific about believing in the prophet, which is Ellen White. She's the woman who started the church. So they're vegetarians. They're strict. They're, like I said, their clothing is different, very plain clothing, nothing that brings attention to you. No nail polish, or even if you do, it's like clear, very basic type of things, no jewelry, all of that stuff. And then you have those other, what we would call bad Adventists, who who are basically just doing the worldly things, but calling themselves Seventh-day Adventists. And so we would call them bad Adventists.
That's funny.
I know.
Oh
So
my
that's where
god.
it's like there's definitely different. You can meet someone who also identifies as SDA, but maybe a little bit more relaxed in how they approach religion. But you can
Mhm.
also meet that SDA that is very intense and is like, and that's what I grew up with is, I was speaking in the church by the time I was 11, that doing, like, youth worships and youth prayers, youth week of prayer, memorizing Bible. We had, like, Bible bowls where we would have to learn, like, all these different verses and be able to, like, know exactly where it is. And so there was a lot of strictness on, like, being
Yeah.
able to memorize Bible verses. It was a lot. So, but there were definitely some people who were more quote unquote normal, but they were just known as, like, bad Ventists versus the actual good Ventists.
Oh my God. I
Yeah,
think
girl.
this is like the
It's a
best part
whole
of the
culture.
conversation.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what makes it very cult-like is because, like I said, when my mom grew up, it was a cult. It wasn't known as a church. And versus by the time that I grew up, it was more recognized as a church. And part of why that's the case is because we are in the world, but we are not of the world. That's a
Mhm.
Bible verse. And so
Yeah.
part of that is like the belief system is that I'm not supposed to be watching, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is what I was watching. I can't watch those shows. I can't listen to secular music. I can't be in the world. So because of that, our world is very small. Everything is based off of whatever the church made. We have our own education systems. We have our own hospitals. We have our own, like, everything. So our world, even in our neighborhoods, like where I went to college, the whole neighborhood is Adventist. There's nobody in there that isn't. And if you are, you're going to be uncomfortable because everything closes on the Sabbath, and then people are just going to expect you to respect the culture of being a Seventh-day Adventist. So it doesn't make sense for you to be here. We're welcome you here, but it's going to be very controlled. So that's where it's like there are definitely neighborhoods even where everybody's Seventh-day Adventist. And so the culture is just very closed, even though we welcome you to come in. But when we welcome you, you better take off your jewelry, stop smoking, stop this, don't have sex before marriage, like all that sort of stuff. And then we'll fully welcome you in.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of this.
Yeah.
I'm cognizant that we're at 10 minutes to the
Oh
hour,
my
and
goodness. This was by
yeah,
so fast.
I know we haven't even gotten fully to where we want to go. I had the feeling that that would be
Me
how
too.
we
I
would
knew it.
roll.
I knew it. When we were
Yeah.
planning this, I was like, oh, girl, we're going to be talking forever because we're both Mercury and
Right.
Sagittarius. So this is
hmm
not.
It's like, and we're Capricorns. So
And
yeah,
we're
we have that in
Capricorn.
common. Yeah. And actually, that's kind of what started. I mean, we were already connecting on Substack, but then when we
Yeah.
both found out we were Capricorns, it was like, okay, what are we collaborating? When are we doing
Right.
this?
Exactly. Let's
Because
get to work, girl.
clearly. So, okay. It's evident that we're going to do a part 2, but I think we're also going to do a live. So I think the part 2 and the live will be separate because the part 2
Yeah.
we were supposed to cover today, but
Yeah.
we're going to cover it next time.
We'll do
So
it next time.
in part 2, we're going to start talking about our Capricorn connection, our experiences with astrology and how it's been portrayed, and our challenges with people trying to also then challenge us about astrology and the ways that we've responded because we drink our own champagne. We don't just say that we should be open to questions. We're also open to questions, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to touch on some of that. But I just want to just say again, Lexie, thank you for sharing your story and being so vulnerable today, because some of these things are not easy to talk about in the first place. Talking to you today has brought up some of my own memories. I'm like, I forgot that I even did that or that or that. And so this was a really enriching session in my opinion. So I just want to say thank you for being on
and
today.
thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for being a safe space, because the only way I can have this conversation is by you creating that space here and holding it. So thank you. I really do appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time, you guys.
All right. Bye.
All right, sis. That's it for today. Thanks for listening to the Mediocre Black Woman podcast. Remember, you're magic even on your messiest days. Don't forget to share this with your bestie and tell them to share it with their bestie too. See you next time. Take it easy and take care.
Gave you more than I gave to myself. You had me on a shelf, but now I'm somewhere else. I was bending, breaking, lost in your storm. Now I'm a hurricane in my purest form. You tried to play me like a fool, had me